Now, this is the first nation to ever win 2 Rugby World Cups. They're 4-time Rugby World Cup finalists and the home of all-time greats such as the feisty George Gregan, the master goose stepper David Campese, and double World Cup winning captain John Eales. So join us as we take a trip down under to look at the downfall of Australian rugby. It seems bizarre that a country with such a rich rugby history is currently sitting 9th in the IRB World Rankings. Once on top of the rugby world, one must question, where has it all gone so horribly wrong? Australia played their first official test in 1899. During its early days, the English media labelled the Australian team the Rabbits. Perceiving this as slander, the Australian players changed their name to the Wallabies, and the moniker remained. During the 1900s, Australian rugby earned a mixed bag of results until true success began in the 1980s, with a consistent winning culture starting to form. This change in fortune began under legendary coach Bob Dwyer and continued suit. Under successful coaches Alan Jones and Greg Smith, rugby was ushered into the professional era. The Wallabies picked up 5 Bledisloe Cups during this time and a memorable World Cup trophy in 1991. At the beginning of the professional era came a king from down under, the robust Rod McQueen. McQueen's record as head coach is exceptional, and under his guidance the Wallabies became the first nation to win 2 Rugby World Cups as he led them to victory in '99. The accolades don't end there. McQueen and his team can lay claim to having won and held the Bledisloe Cup for the entirety of his tenure until he departed in 2001. In addition to this, he led the Wallabies to their first ever Tri-Nations title and reclaimed the title the following year. Finally, the Wallabies achieved their first ever series win over the British and Irish Lions in 2001. It was evident that Australia was without doubt king of the mountain, and yet here we are telling a completely different tale. Still a powerhouse at the time, the Wallabies claimed the 2002 Bledisloe Cup and narrowly lost out to winners England in a nail-biting World Cup final in 2003, thanks to, yes you guessed it, that drop goal from none other than Jonny Wilkinson. Now, since that fateful day, the Wallabies have not won a Bledisloe Cup, managed to make the semi-finals of the World Cup on only 2 occasions, and won 2 rugby championships. While 2 rugby championships may sound impressive, both victories occurred in World Cup years 2011 and 2015, when their arch-rivals fielded second-rate sides to give their heavy hitters a break before the World Cup commenced. The problems Australian rugby faces currently cannot be singled out to one glaring problem, but rather a combination of several factors. Following the shambolic showing at the 2023 RWC, which included a group stage exit for the first time in Aussie history. Now, let's take a look at the causes behind the once great mega power, now a rugby nation in ruins. Having said this, it's not because they're without talent. Mercurial captain Michael Hooper, try-scoring machine Coram Bette, and the Tongan Thor, Taniela Tupou, to mention a few. Now, a blessing for Australia, but a curse to Australian rugby, is that they're a nation that excels in a number of different sports, while their rivals only focus on rugby union. Although countries such as New Zealand, South Africa and Ireland are not known for their involvement in other sports such as cricket and football, rugby union is the overwhelming sport preferred by the populace. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Australia, a nation where Aussie rules, rugby league, cricket and football are all seen as being more popular. Young athletes weighing up their futures tend to prefer the option which provides more fame and fortune. In the case of Australia, that's not rugby union. While we have seen code-swapping stars make the jump, a successful transition is not always guaranteed. The attraction to stick with rugby union and the allure of the gold jersey is not what it once was, and therefore Australian rugby is at loggerheads when it comes to retaining the best possible talent. They face losing their best players to overseas big spenders like France and Japan, and likewise to rugby league, like upcoming playmaker Carter Gordon.
Signature of Wallabies star Mark Nwanganita-Waze, the 23-year-old outside back, is set to sign with the Tricolours on a 2-year deal. It's a slice of revenge for the Roosters, who've already lost Joseph Suaalii to Australian Rugby.
It's a maxim that politics and sport should be kept separate. In recent times, however, Australian Rugby has suffered from the disconnect between the powers that be and the head coaching staff. In an attempt to bridge this gap, there is a move to introduce former players into executive positions within Australian Rugby, like that of Waratah Phil Waugh, who is now CEO. Only time will tell whether this appointment, along with the faith shown in new head coach Joe Schmidt, will bear fruit.
I don't know if I'm the best person to describe myself as a coach. I think you could probably ask some of the players that I've coached. I'm a small town kid from Kawakoa, New Zealand. In recent times, probably the last 20 years, I've been a professional rugby coach, a job I fell into.
A catalyst for success amongst the best teams in world rugby in the past has been down to two words: culture and continuity. Words which don't describe Australian rugby for the better part of the last decade. When one looks at the greatest teams that dominated different periods of world rugby, one thing they all had in common was culture and continuity. It's no mystery that successful teams follow tried and tested methods. The first example to look at is the 2011 to 2015 All Blacks, considered by many to be the greatest team of all time. Coached by the distinguished Sir Graham Henry in 2011 and subsequently by his assistant Sir Steve Hansen. Along with the decision to appoint Hansen as the man to lead New Zealand Rugby to the 2015 World Cup, the well-respected Wayne Smith was kept on as assistant, forming an integral part of instilling correct culture, providing continuity. In terms of the players, inspirational captain Richie McCaw led the team during both periods and were well supported by players who were leaders in their own right, such as Dan Carter, Kieran Reid, Sam Whitelock and Kevin Milamu, to name a few. 7 of the starting 15 participated in both finals, with the 2015 side boasting a number of centurions with much needed experience. No player was seen as being bigger than the team, and no matter the winning margin, Hansen often stated the need to improve. At the same time, to give you a sense of reference as to how high the floor was for Aussie Rugby, they were a close second to this mighty All Blacks team, only losing to them in the 2015 RWC finals. Secondly, let's look at the Springbok side of 2019 to the present day. The side was initially led by the innovative and controversial Rassie Erasmus to the 2019 World Cup. The side was then led by Erasmus's right-hand man, Jacques Nienaber, to the 2023 World Cup, with Erasmus remaining involved as a quote-unquote waterboy/director of rugby. Following the success of the 2023 World Cup, Erasmus resumed his role as head coach. Furthermore, a whopping 22 of the 2019 World Cup squad members formed part of the successful title defence in 2023. Not only was continuity a major part of the Springboks' success, but just like the All Blacks, culture and brotherhood was instilled by Erasmus and Nienaber. The state of Australian rugby obviously pales in comparison to these examples when comparing continuity and culture within the camp. Following the 2011 World Cup, the Wallabies have had a different head coach on 6 occasions. When compared with their rivals, other countries such as New Zealand and Ireland have done so on only 3 occasions, and South Africa 4. Unlike South Africa and New Zealand, Australia have not implemented any similar system of promoting assistant coaches from within a successful tenure to the mantle of head coach. Instead, they've looked to appoint coaches with vastly different game plans and rugby philosophies. In terms of personnel, Joe Schmidt's 38-man squad, 30 of the players have 30 caps or less, with 21 players having 10 caps or less. Australian rugby has also been hampered by players in recent memory thinking themselves to be bigger than the jersey. Billabong bad boys like James O'Connor, Kurtley Beale and Quade Cooper seldomly receive the expected backlash for the occasional misdemeanour. Promoting a culture that lacked compliance to rules and regs expected that of a top-tier nation. Joe Schmidt, however, brings with him an aura and respect which would suggest that this attitude will not be tolerated under his reign. Once known for an exciting, unique brand of risk-taking running rugby, coupled with a tenacious and ferocious upfront approach, Australian rugby seems to have lost their DNA. Whether Joe's Joeys will be given license to roam and play that expansive game that allowed them to showcase their skills synonymous with a Wallaby is yet to be seen. But one thing is a certainty: if Schmidt is to succeed in the role, he'll need to establish a DNA lost in the camp over the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's awesome. Hey, it's great to learn a lot about Indigenous people. And
The question remains, can Australia's top brass find the correct formula? Is Joe Schmidt the right man to lead the charge? And finally, can this new and youthful troop of Wallabies do the gold jersey proud? Well, we'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on the state of Australian rugby and what the Wallabies should do to turn things around. Leave your comments below, like and subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay informed with in-depth insights regarding everything rugby. Until next time, this is Clutch Rugby.